ASP.NET Core applications require a server in order to receive the request and send the response. Kestrel is the default cross-platform HTTP server for ASP.NET Core applications. It acts as both development server as well as real application server, which is able to receive the request from real internet. However, most of the cases in the real world, you will use the Kestrel as an application server and a development server only. And in production, you will be using reverse proxy servers. Meaning is that during development, the developers use Kestrel as a development server. Meaning, you will be writing some ASP.NET Core code and you will be testing or running the application by using the default server called Kestrel. And after completion of the development, you require to push the code into the production server, which can receive the request from the internet anywhere in the world. So there, the Kestrel acts as an application server, and you will be using reverse proxy servers such as IIS, Nginx, or Apache, any one of these. The architecture looks like this. With only Kestrel, the HTTP request will be received from local network or internet. The Kestrel receives that request and it will forward that request to application code. The Kestrel receives the request and fills the information in the form of an object, and that object is called as HTTP context. So the Kestrel prepares a HTTP context object which contains the details of the request and sends that HTTP context to the application code, so that the application code can receive that context and can process based on that and can provide the response or result back to the Kestrel. Then the Kestrel sends the same response back to the internet or the client. So this is the general process that happens with Kestrel. But Kestrel doesn't support some of the advanced features that are required on internet in these days. For example, load balancing, URL rewriting, this type of features are required or expected in these days on production servers. These are by default not supported by the Kestrel. But don't worry, this is not necessarily a drawback or a problem. Most of the websites today use a reverse proxy server. Meaning is that the actual request from the client will be received by a reverse proxy server such as IIS, Nginx, or Apache. And these reverse proxy servers offer some of the advanced features on internet such as load balancing, URL rewriting, authentication, caching, etc. And these servers transfer the same request to the actual application server, that is Kestrel. In that way, even though the Kestrel can actually receive the request from internet, it won't do that in the real world cases. In most of the production scenarios, we prefer a reverse proxy servers because of these advanced features. And that reverse proxy server will transfer the request to the Kestrel. And then, as usual, the Kestrel receives the request and prepares HTTP context, and that context object contains the details of the request, such as request body or request headers or the session or cookies, etc. And then the application code receives the request along with the context and can execute some code and can provide the response back to the Kestrel. And the Kestrel, as usual, sends the same response back to the proxy server, means reverse proxy server. And then the same response will be sent back to the actual client who sends the request. So in the real production scenarios, this is the process what happens in the real world. But You need not much worry about this reverse proxy server for time being at the beginning stage. You can only concentrate on Kestrel. So Kestrel is the default HTTP server for ASP.NET Core application. This is the main point to remember. In addition to this, you can simulate the features of reverse proxy server during development as well by using a dummy reverse proxy server called IIS Express. IIS Express simulates IIS, means it acts as a reverse proxy server which can receive the request and forward the same to Kestrel. Of course, during development, it is just an option whether to use IIS Express or not, because IIS Express is the lightweight IIS. So it simulates the process of real IIS. Of course, as you can guess, both IIS Express and actual IIS both are supported by Windows operating system only. Nginx, Apache are supported by Linux mainly. Of course, by Windows as well. So this is the overview of the servers that we are going to use in ASP.NET Core applications. But where is the Kestrel? Can we see that? See, by default, when you try to run this application, it automatically opens up the browser, such as Chrome or Firefox, whatever default browser on your machine, and sends the request, and our application receives that request and provides the response, that is hello world. This is the common process. But before this thing happens, means before the browser can send request, internally on the terminal, the Kestrel server has been opened. You can see that here. See, in background, this type of window has been opened. So this terminal window indicates the Kestrel server. This is the default log that was generated by the Kestrel server. As soon as the application execution starts, the Kestrel automatically kicks in. And by default, that Kestrel server gets started, so that your application is available to receive the request. Then only the Chrome-like browsers can send request, and of course you will get the response accordingly. So one thing you remember, you are able to send the request and get the response means by default the Kestrel is running. Let's do an experiment. For example, if you try closing this terminal window, see, the server has been stopped. In case if you send the request right now, you are unable to reach out. For example, I am trying to open the Chrome. Here entering the URL, that is localhost 5042 here, and trying to send the request. It is unable to reach out. It is saying the site cannot be reached. That is because the Kestrel has been stopped right now. So the Kestrel server has to be in active state to receive the request. But how do you enable the reverse proxy server, that is IIS Express? Let us try that by using launch settings in the next lecture.